You're listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where we talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. And sometimes I talk to men too. In this episode, I got to speak with Jaret Martino, an actor and producer, Pat Branch, a writer, and Marjorie LeWit, an actor, writer, and director. They're collaborators on a project called Stronger Than Pretty, which is the story of Jaret's mother and her empowering journey of strength. Basically, you're going to love them. They are doing work that is meaningful, is full of heart, that matters. We talk a lot about the responsibility and privilege it is to tell real stories about real people. It's complicated, and about what unites us all. Real unity is possible, and storytelling is how we get there. You can find us at theother50%.com to see bios, photos, the blog, the coffee cups, the t-shirts. You can find us on iTunes, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the places. And we are now available on Stitcher. So find us there and tell all your friends. And I have another podcast called The Other 50%, A Herstory of Tech. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, or on the Other 50% website. That is where I talk to successful women in tech and hear their stories. And if you know someone I need to talk to, let me know. Okay, here's Jaret, Pat, and Marjorie. Welcome. Usually when I have one person, I start by asking, what is your job? But since there are three of you, I think we'll go around and if you just introduce yourself and kind of say what you do in general and a little bit of your background so we can kind of get oriented. Let's start with Pat.
So I'm a screenwriter and a member of the Writers Guild West, Writers Guild of America West. And my day job is teaching in LA Unified School District. So I studied filmmaking at Temple University in Philadelphia, which is my hometown, and then moved to Los Angeles to proceed to not sell any scripts until I met Jaret.
How long have you been here?
Since '93, so a little while.
And you've been teaching that whole time too?
Pretty much, yes. I started as a day-to-day sub and then moved into being a special needs teacher. So I teach kids that can't go to school.
Oh my word, that's a big, important job.
Apparently. People say that. It's just what I do and I like it.
You just think nothing of it?
Yeah, I just go in and I do it and, people think, oh my God. And they have this whole noblesse oblige thing. And for me, it's just, to me, those kids are just kids that need a teacher. They just can't go to school. So I don't really see it as anything spectacular, but apparently it is, so I'm beginning to embrace that.
Well, that's why you're the perfect person for the job.
Thank you.
What kind of things do you normally write?
I also do stand-up comedy, so my slant is comedy, and that's actually one of the best compliments that Jaret paid me about the script, because I didn't even know that this was funny, or that there were funny parts to this, because I sort of injected that into it, because it's really important. Especially, my childhood wasn't like Cinderella-ish or anything, so I found that having humor really helps you from sitting in a corner dribbling your lips.
Yes.
So that's really how to me, there is humor in everything, and if you don't believe that, read some Shakespeare.
And comedy is tragedy plus time,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. So I just use a humorous approach to everything where it's appropriate. Sometimes it's not appropriate. Somebody once tried to tell a Rosa Parks joke, and I stood up and said, "It better be funny. It better be so funny." And it was. But boy, was he nervous.
I bet.
So that's that's what I do. So I write mostly comedy. This is only my second drama. My first one was my own. I wrote a drama script, but mostly I write comedy, teach, and do stand-up. Those are my three things.
And you're just on a world tour with Jules Catch One.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to intrude on Stronger Than Pretty. Yes, I...
Tell us what you're doing.
Oh, okay. I associate produced a documentary called Jules Catch One about activist, healer, that lives in Los Angeles, local to Los Angeles. Used to run a club called The Catch that she just closed in 2015. And my friend Fitz made a documentary about her, and we've just been to London and New York, and they went to Milwaukee, and doing the festival circuit, and then they just went back to London, BFI Flair Film Festival, because she was an LGBT activist that just took on a role from becoming a nightclub owner to working with the underserved community when the AIDS crisis hit.
Mm-hmm.
And,
amazing.
So I worked with Fitz it's been 7 years, and I've been with her the whole time. Making that. And now it's done, and so we're, working on actually the narrative for that, but that's the other thing, just traveling the world.
Traveling the world. I love it. London, New York, Milwaukee.
Yeah, I know, right? And Palm Springs, Boston. They're in Boston next weekend. Then we're going to Toronto, Melbourne, and some other places that I don't remember.
Great. You're doing it.
I'm trying.
Okay, Marjorie, welcome.
Thank you.
Who are you?
I'm Marjorie LeWit. I'm a director. I'm from New York, but I love Milwaukee. I went to school in New York. I went to Pace University. I have a BFA in theater arts, so I went for acting.
Me too.
And I think directing just was sort of meant to be. I've been writing since I could pick up a pen, so sort of went write, then show people what I mean, on stage, and then, no, let me actually direct you to what I mean. So it kind of fell in. I still do some acting. I'm with a theater company in North Hollywood called Defiance Theater Company. Jaret and I met. I was editing his reel. He said, "Hey, check out this script." I was like, "Sure." Tell me your thoughts, he said. So
I think I should direct it.
I basically, put a bunch of little marks all over the script and told him some ideas I had. And I said, you should just shoot something. You should shoot a short. You should shoot a proof of concept. And he was like, "Yeah, I should." And then he reached out to me and said, "Would I direct it?" And I said, "Absolutely." So Pat kind of put together an idea of how we could summarize the experience of Stronger Than Pretty. And, I directed it, and Pat also AD'd it, and Jaret, man, he did a million other things on the set, from, catering to, we pulled it together. We pulled it together as best we could with what little we had.
It was way beyond best we could. They did an excellent job.
And great actors as well.
So we're kind of circling around this project, but we haven't talked about what it is yet. So you all are working together on a project called Stronger Than Pretty.
Yeah.
Which I think you're going to tell us has a bunch of iterations.
But we have to hear about Jaret.
After Jaret introduces himself.
Jaret Martino, I'm an actor, producer, originally from New York, and I came out here about 8 years ago, and I started producing my own content about 3 years ago. Now I'm on my 10th film, and
your 10th film?
My 10th film.
As producer?
Yeah, as a producer. Good. 3 of them just got distribution. All my projects focus on creating awareness for subjects deserving attention, and Stronger Than Pretty is about my mother's life.
Tell us more.
Yeah, tell you
what
more.
about her life?
I originally wrote the first draft in between 2 plane rides, just as a therapeutic way to get it out. And there's so much. It's always hard to talk about this.
I know.
There's so much.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah, I wrote the first draft as a therapeutic way to get it out as a child from a single parent family home, and I don't know how to put any of this into words.
It's a survivor story.
It's a survivor
his
story.
His mom, and also him and his siblings were
to celebrate women and the children coming from an environment like that.
So it was a domestic violence situation that your mom was able to get out of and then raise her children by herself?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think also, more than that, more than violence, emotional abuse as well.
Yeah,
and abuse of power in that, you have someone making all the money and using that power to control you. And the idea that can happen to anyone and any time, any class, any race, any time period from, 100 years ago to today, this can happen. And that, that it doesn't have to be your stereotypical, lifetime original, which is what Jaret's always saying. Like, most platforms describe this experience through a very over-dramatic, lifetime original.
And a lot of men in this business that have seen the short and were interested in helping produce it or bring it somewhere, said, "This is great. It's perfect for Lifetime." And
right.
I wanted to make this so it can be commercialized finally and put out there.
So are you saying you would
way.
like it on Lifetime, or you're thinking of a different audience?
No.
Okay. Yeah, talk about that.
We love you, Lifetime.
Lifetime's
Yeah, nothing
awesome.
against Lifetime,
but it's
but
not the burning bed.
No.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a more empowering version. I was always careful. I always spoke to Pat about, not going into... Of course, we have to show the abuse part, but I wanted to skip over that as fast as possible because my mother's life has become so much more than that.
So much larger than that abuse.
It's more than being a victim.
Yeah, the story really is, it's also within the conditioning of, how she was treated as a woman, how she grew up to not be a strong woman, in so many different ways in the workplace and even at home, wasn't encouraged for her to go to school.
When was she born? Ish.
She's 61, I guess, yeah.
Okay, so she was born in the 50s.
Someone better with math. I'm going to stick to acting and producing.
So I'm going to say she was born in the 50s and really came of age like late 60s, early 70s.
It's unreal she's in her 60s because I would not be able to guess. She's got some good Italian genes.
But yeah, that was a time when, my mother got divorced in 1970, I want to say 2, and went to the department store to pay her credit card bill and said she wanted to put it in her name because she was divorced, and they took it out of her hand and cut it up. Mm-hmm. That's how it was at the time. Yeah. So it wasn't as easy as when I got divorced.
Have credit until I think 74 was when women were allowed to have their own credit card accounts, which that's why when younger women now want to have issues about feminism and they just don't understand what they didn't have.
Yes.
What they wouldn't have had if it weren't for feminism and if it weren't for the women's movement of the 70s and it was just equal rights, and I think you couldn't even own property. There was just a lot of couldn'ts for women then.
We've actually come a really long way, and so far that people don't even realize how recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the sort of the tricky part. It's like, okay, well, yes, let's get rid of feminism. Oh, can I have those credit cards? And you can have your own car, kind of thing. So
exactly. Okay, so in this context of that was the time your mother left her husband and raised how many kids?
3.
In New York?
In New York, yeah.
By herself. That's pretty good.
I mean, you got to have a support system, so she had some great friends.
Friends and family definitely helped, but she, like she said in the interview after the short, she did a lot of physical labor, cleaning houses, waitressing.
A gazillion jobs all at once,
Yeah, so while we were in school, she was going to school. She put herself through school and then juggling jobs. And I remember getting up and there'd already be dinner made, for later on if we either had a babysitter, if she or my older brother would be there to take care of us if she was either working or still in class.
But the dinner in the oven?
The dinner on the stove, yeah. Or in the oven, depending on what you made.
Yeah, no matter how dire things were, that's something I always loved, is that Donna she always made sure that the family ate and ate well and that they gathered around the table.
Yeah, I always say, I thought we grew up rich. I didn't know that. Because we were the busiest kids on the block. We lived in a basement apartment. We would take drives to Hershey Park, or we'd do everything, free theater, concerts, any... arts and culture. She'd always be looking in the papers and, making sure that we didn't go without.
So you really watched your mother become this warrior, survivor, incredible person.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I mean, even in telling this story, I say that I've watched my mom become a woman in a way that she's owning her strength and, embracing a lot of things that she wouldn't have before, not only just about how far she's come, but, so many things that she was conditioned to not be. As a Catholic girl from Brooklyn.
She was supposed to be obedient.
Exactly, yeah. So she's quiet.
She became a badass.
And, So many things she was told was wrong, and now it's just, the past couple of years that she's found her freedom and her happiness, and it's really... And especially, doing these events at Sundance, it was like her life almost led up to that moment on the red carpet. it's emotional to talk about. Because watching her, just she owned every second of it, and like I loved watching her in the dress and taking pictures, and
it's so great.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
And I think it's extraordinary as her kid to be able to recognize that. Because you don't look that old. How old are you?
I think, I've been in...
17, right?
He looks about 17.
I think he's about 17. I'm going to say 17.
I play 17 to 24.
That's actually what you say. I play 17 to 24. That's the end of that.
I think through acting and a little bit of therapy, I've come to realize that I'm an empathetic soul, and that's, it helps me tell stories and be a part of stories, but especially for my mom, I think that I've had this empathy for her since I was in the womb almost. It's like I remember, knowing, I felt the weight of her schedule as a kid, not in terms of like, I felt very taken care of, but I wanted to take care of her. She'd come home and I'd reheat the dinner. I wouldn't cook her dinner, but I'd make sure I knew what time she'd be home, so I'd have her plate out and a candle lit, or just.
You saw your mother as a human, which I think takes kids a long time to get to seeing their parents. I work on it every day with my kids. I'm a human.
You don't see them outside of being a mother, because your whole life, that's what they are to you. It's so weird.
Do you think that's their whole identity?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've always had this relationship. My brother and my sister were her kids. We've been more of best friends.
Are you the baby in the family?
No, I'm the middle. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone's nodding. Well, that explains everything.
He's damn Brady.
I'm a middle child.
Okay, so you had this story. Somehow you got it to Pat to help with drafts. Tell me about this process. Because it sounds like you've done a lot of iterations. You did as a theater, as a reading, as a how?
Yeah, one of the earlier drafts was a staged reading, and then yeah, we've went on the blacklist. We went on, had various writers come in. I have other producers on board. We've gotten notes, I think, from all over the place.
He basically, we were Facebook friends, and he contacted me because he saw that I was in a screenwriting group that when he was looking for a writer to help him with the script, and he found me, and I read a half of the first page and said, yes, I would love to work on this with you.
But I'm in.
Mm-hmm. It was just so beautifully, yeah, he even, when he sent me the email, he was like, I'm not a writer, but, and I was like, oh Lord, here we go. And then, so I was like, oh, I'm so scared to write it. And he said, it's about my family, so it's personal, so please be careful with your criticism. Like, oh Lord, have mercy.
No pressure, no pressure.
So, but I did read it, and just halfway down after Fade In, I emailed him back to ask if I could work on the project with him.
What about it spoke to you?
Just the way he just introduced a day in the life in Brooklyn, and his mom's family, and his grandmother. They were getting in the initial version, they were just getting home from church on a Sunday afternoon, and he made me see colors, and that was really, which is rare,
The one who's not a writer.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I wrote back and said, you're a storyteller. And that's, that's really, being able, I could certainly pinpoint where the details needed to be and how they needed to be and how to make it visual, because, obviously the one mistake people will make in writing for the screen is putting down things you can't show. And, so if you say, well, she's thinking, and I describe what she might look like to show that thinking, show what she's thinking kind of thing. But yeah, it was he just made me see colors in half a page. And that was, I could see the color of the dress that his mom was wearing, and the sunlight, the time of day it was, and where the sunlight would be. And it was just and I just, wanted to work on that. And so then I went through it, and yeah, we did that draft and did a stage reading. We cast that was the funny part, was once I gave him that draft, which would be for me, draft 2. I'm not sure if that was the second draft, and he said, okay, we're going to cast it now. And I was like, oh, okay, well, good luck. And he's like, well, no, I want you there. And I'm like, there where? And he goes, for the casting. I'm like, ooh, that's not how it's done. This is where you kick me to the curb. You don't want me there anymore. And he goes, nope, I want you there the whole way. And I was like, you do? Okay.
Love it.
So yeah, it was very, and then I saw his documentary, Driven the documentary, and as soon as it was over, I said, I need to meet your mom. And this is before I'd even started on the script. And I said, I need to meet your mom. I need to meet the woman that raised you, because you're a very unusual man in Hollywood. To be young and good looking and producing films and kind, you're kind, and that's just very rare. And I don't mean anything against you, Hollywood, but sometimes people can be very, very harsh. I had to learn. I ran right up to bought a bulletproof, suit of metal for my ego because people can be mean, and there's just this kindness that emanated from him that I just it's so rare. I've had so much smoke blown up my ass, and so many people have made promises and just lie. They just lie. People just lie, and he tells the truth. I've never felt a scintilla of mistrust in myself regarding him. And
this is high praise.
Just saying, So it was just, and then from there on, it's been 2.5 years. We started in November of 2014, and here we are now.
Pat knows my whole family.
Yes,
she stayed at my house when we did the New York screening.
And it was so funny because because I'm from West Philadelphia, and
West Philadelphia,
born and raised. Not that part. That was the Will Smith part. I'm from the other side. Anyway, so a lot of times when I was working on the script, I would have to Google stuff because I just didn't, to get a visual of what I wanted to be writing about, I would have to Google it. Because I just didn't know. And I was, I was texting him and all, but sometimes, it gets tedious. He's like, well, what about this? I'm like, just look it up. So I did. And then the fun part was that, when we had a family and friend screening in, the fall of last year, and Jaret took me on a tour, and I actually got to see a lot of the areas that I'd already written about and meet people that I'd written about. And that was the really cool thing, was to meet people that you've been creating around their lives for the past 2 years. It was very extraordinary, very, very. Yeah, that was. And to
it sounds like you are family now.
Yes, I am. I have a tree on his mother's property that I said, it's my tree. My last name is Branch, so I have a thing for trees and leaves, and so I'm like, my maple tree. It's Japanese,
a gorgeous,
beautiful.
Japanese maple right outside my back door.
And it's the first thing that I, attached myself to. I'm like, I just stand there and look at it.
You just claimed it.
Mm-hmm. So whenever he's home, I'm like, say hi to my tree.
Now, Marjorie, how did you get involved in this project?
Yeah, so, Jaret and I kind of do a lot of different things. I'm a director, but I also write and I act and I edit and I shoot and I do everything that sort of builds stories in every capacity, it seems. And so I met Jaret when a mutual friend of ours, Nicole Manji, actually recommended...
Who was in our stage reading.
Who was in the reading, recommended that I edit his reel.
His acting reel?
His acting reel. So he comes over and he comes to my Koreatown studio and we're at my computer and we're stringing things together, and I felt like he wasn't even there to edit his reel. He was really just there to meet me. Because it really just felt like I barely remember that we edited a reel because we just got to talking and then he's like, read the script. I read the script. We talked on the phone for a while. I was like, more than just writing you notes, I'd love to just talk about it. So we talked for a while, and he felt that it was a good conversation. And then, like I said, you should shoot something. He said we should. Then he came back to me and said, do you want to direct it? I said yes. Pat, created the proof of concept, and then
no, you sent me the script, and then I
kind of sent, I guess, an idea of what we wanted.
Okay,
and then. What
outline.
Would be, and then an outline of what we wanted, and I kind of picked out some of the best things that Pat wrote, and that would sort of summarize
beginning, middle, and
end. Beginning, and then Pat kind of tied it all together. And then we shot it. We did it, and then somehow ended up at Sundance, and somehow ended up here. And
I always say this project it's created a life of its own at this point, and really just wants to be told. Because even. As much as I can do as a producer on, even with a budget, we didn't have a budget on this, and it was, so many things just fell into place, and locations, and my neighbor who I've lived next to for a long time, 8 years now, I knew she was a costume designer, but she just so happened to have period, from the 60s to the 80s.
That's handy.
All costumes, so... we lucked out that way, and
John, our DP.
John Schweigert, our DP, really took a liking to the story, and just so many donations and such a passion behind getting this made.
Zach for the house. We shot so much at this one house, our friend Zachary Jaden's house, and
owns a big house in Glendale Hills, and it just so happened to looked like it was right out of the 1970s. So it's just like everything just
in a
fell
good way.
into place.
Is it one of those projects where like little miracles happen one after another that just help you?
Yes.
At every
Do you want to think about it before you answer that?
This has been a really synchronistic year, though. So just to tie together some of the projects I'm working on, we're working on this, directing it in the fall, and we just this past weekend did a project that Jaret kind of thought up. I don't even know how you thought
Well, there's such, at every turn, wherever this has been seen, or even after we launched the website and just people seeing the trailer, it's compelled people to want to share their voice. And one of the taglines is "A voice to be heard." It's the journey of a young woman finding her voice. So even if they didn't, the people that ended up sharing, even if they didn't experience exactly what happened in Stronger Than Pretty, they just wanted to open up, and we've heard so many different stories
it was amazing
of survival.
Jaret thought up this idea.
So I created this platform as an extension of Stronger Than Pretty called Inner Warrior, because I just felt like, I was getting emails and people reaching out so frequently that I was like, I need to do something else to support and
It's bigger than
provide a platform for everybody else.
So this past weekend we shot something called Inner Warrior. It's a project involving 30 plus people that we interviewed to tell their stories of survival. Everyone from cancer survivors to people who've escaped, domestic abuse or violence of war, people who've gone through disabilities and accidents and, you name it. Just
Was it
true survivors.
Men and women? Or
men and women and people of all ages. And, we had this incredibly inspiring day with all these people. And I said to Jaret, beyond the idea that this would be tied to Stronger Than Pretty, it was just a day in itself that was worth it. It didn't even matter if we filmed or not. Everybody was so happy and inspired and hugging each other and making contacts and connections. Everyone added each other on Facebook. I believe that someone from that day created a private Facebook group, not even Jaret or anyone tied to Stronger Than Pretty. Someone created a private, Stronger Than Pretty Inner Warrior Facebook group so that we could all be in contact and talk to each other. People writing emails, thanking Jaret, thanking me, saying that this is important, that it's so important that these stories are told, and, just immense amounts of love. You meet strangers and you don't know that 8 hours later you're just loving them completely and wholly.
The whole room was hugging each other and saying it was the most cathartic thing that they've ever done, the best project they've worked on. We had people that are, that are names in the industry that have worked on so many different things, and they said that it was the best set they've ever been on. And that was, the greatest gift for me that day, because it was...
I think that's
pulling
a
anything
mini
together.
miracle. You talk about little miracles coming together. Plus, I work at Quixote Studios, which is an incredible business in that they come from a place of just values and high morals, and they if based on the name is from Don Quixote's story, to dream the impossible dream. So. They're a very supportive business, and I love my job, and I love going to work every day. But if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have been able to shoot in such an awesome space for a no-budget project. Jaret's cooking food for people and, bringing bagels and just being awesome. We really come together. It's actually, some people might not want to brag about that, but I actually love that.
Brag about it.
I love that you make all these things happen, because for me, it says you don't need money to do these money is not what brings people together. Money is not what makes art. Money is not what tells a story. Those are nice things to have. And we would love money to make the movie and
Send the money.
Yes, spend money.
Spend money. But that's not what drives you, And so I love that he's I'm making pasta, and he's just this Italian chef, making catering for 30 plus people and just showing up with bags and bags full of food and making sure everyone's fed. And we've got this amazing studio space, and just one of the stage managers is putting the lights up for us, with no ties to anything, just everyone just doing stuff because they believe in it or want to help.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of it was, and we had the original casting of Inner Warrior, and it was everybody's separate stories, and we cried half the day. Mm-hmm. And then I said,
all the day.
Yeah. And I said the most, the best part of this day was the coming together, like that the message was the same message no matter how different their story was. And I said, how brilliant would it be if all these people were in the same room and could recognize the fact that all these different walks of life were really saying the same thing of how they overcame and how they, through their mindset, that they made that switch and
it was special that everyone was
empowered
at the
each other.
Same time rather than separate interviews. It was
it's the human resilience of it all. So you were interviewing people one at a time, but everybody was there.
It was like a group therapy, group circle,
Sure.
And then there was just lights on one person in a chair, and they told their story in front of everybody, and that's why everyone felt so close and so bonded together. Yeah.
So is this going to be a video, a documentary?
It's going to be added to strongerthanpretty.com/innerwarrior, so it has its own page within the Stronger Than Pretty platform.
It's like a mini doc. It'll be
so it's it's going to be added to the YouTube and blog. Yeah, so right on strongerthanpretty.com.
Yeah, the idea is to do a compilation sort of with one guided message in one video, and then you can definitely offshoot to everybody's individual stories underneath. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go learn what it's like to make it and survive through anorexia, because that's your thing that you need to get past, that you need someone else to talk to you about that. Someone else who knows, not just, your doctor who, has learned in school or has had experience with different patients, but someone who's actually been through it. And that's everybody's different stories. Someone who's been through, what it's like to...
Also, with a lot of their stories, they didn't actually get help from those typical places. They found it in various ways. And that's why Inner Warrior, I had asked them to, if they have their own platform, if they can refer a platform, that we put those links up.
For more support.
Yeah. And people turned their, I don't want to say tragedies, but their obstacles or struggles around. They've been through something and they didn't let that guide their life. So they, that's one woman, she started Improv It Up, and she gives back to people through improv.
And Bald is Beautiful for
Bald
cancer.
Is Beautiful, yeah. So these, just like Jaret's mom, what he just said is that it's not all about being a victim,
Yeah.
She decided she's going to go back to school, she turned her life around, she's a teacher, and I think as well, beyond that, I mean, look at her kid. Look at her kids, how well they're doing. And their relationship's stronger, I think, because of this film. We were talking about this last year. He's like, if this film never got made, just the process of making it has changed my life and the dynamic in my family. And I'm like, isn't that neat? Like, just anything that you do in whatever direction you go, someone's life is being touched,
Yes.
Yeah, coming from a family with that there was an alcoholic, everybody took on certain traits, and although we're really tight and the communication has always been really open, I think that some of that pain still lived within all of us, and I think seeing it on the big screen for everybody really changed the dynamic a little bit.
Yeah, how is that? Because it's so naked for you as you're in a theater watching. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
I know.
Yeah, it was...
how was that?
I think it might have been... It was easier for me to get to that point because I've been through all the rewrites and the process, the journey of where Stronger Than Pretty is today.
What about your siblings?
Sitting in the theater next to my mom and my grandmother and my brother and sister was a tough day. But I think also a beautiful day because they, were so tight knit, and my mom's such a force that immediately after that, there wasn't even really a conversation about it. It just kind of brought us even closer. I didn't think that was possible, but
was everybody game for you to do it?
Yeah, definitely.
There wasn't any resistance of, you're gonna share our dirty laundry with the world?
No, I think how much my mom's been able to accomplish. I mean, I wrote this because I wanted to celebrate the fact that she's played mother and father, and I think a lot of kids today, growing up from a single parent family home, there's a stigma around that, and I want to, not only help the women in that situation or men have come, that's another big point, that this does happen to men as well, on the domestic violence side, but that children are able to celebrate the fact that they, their mother played mother and father, or their father played mother and father. That's was definitely one of my main points in seeing this through.
Has your father seen it?
He has, yeah.
How'd that go?
So through the marketing and everything that's happened for Stronger Than Pretty thus far, he ended up getting a link, and he kept calling me about it, and I didn't answer because I knew what it was about. And then 3 days later, I was also just really busy, and then I picked up his call 3 days later, and we had a conversation about that, and he was surprisingly he just said it was really beautiful. What are the next steps?
What?
Yeah.
Well, it was beautifully done. He was praising his son, I guess. That's...
I think he knew at that point, and he said your mother did a great job with you guys, and he wouldn't take that away from her. I think that's the difficult part about abuse is that it's not that he didn't have a heart or care about his family, and I think that's where
that's something I'd like to talk about too, is that, again, Lifetime presents these villains, or a lot of the times that these stories are told, it's just villain. He was charming, he was romantic, he did love, he was passionate, driven, cared about his work, which was inspiring to see.
I also, through this, realized how much I'm like my father.
How was that for you?
It was great because I'm the healthiest version of him. I'm the version that he didn't choose to be, and that his conditioning didn't allow him to be. Unfortunately, I had my mother, there for me to create, the new generation. And also, I made my own choices to make that happen. But I'm very similar to my dad. His eccentric and driven and passionate, and
but
he's a fun,
more patient
loving,
and kind. And I don't know if I've ever seen you angry.
I have, but you can't tell. It's really weird. You're like...
he's not going to physically act out, and that's, I guess, the most important.
He goes, I was so mad that day. And I'm like, you were? Okay. I realized, I thought you got a little quiet, but I didn't realize he was just furious.
You seem irritated.
Well, I've known you for 45 minutes. You seem remarkably healthy.
Yeah.
What I've heard. Wow. Okay, so what is the next step for this project? Because you did a short that went to Sundance. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we had a special screening at the Indie Lounge at Sundance Film Festival, and I just came back from... It's important to me for all my projects, but especially, for Stronger Than Pretty and its message, hiring predominantly female crew. So I just came back from New York, which is where we'll be shooting. So I locked locations there, met female DPs and sound and attorneys, and even people that I didn't expect to be female were, and it just all lined up. So that was really beautiful.
So you're going to do it as a feature now?
Yeah, feature in, the goal is September, so we're still in the midst of talking to a few investors.
Maybe, I don't know.
Early fall is the target. Is the target date, yeah.
Why is it important to you to hire women?
The fact that only 6% get hired for the jobs.
You've noticed?
In the entertainment. Yeah. Stronger Than Pretty's message about female, it's female empowerment and rights, and
it would seem strange to cast an all-male crew.
So you're going to walk the talk, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, how do you prepare as a director?
I eat a healthy breakfast. And make sure I'm not hungry and
hangry.
Food is the most important thing. I eat a lot of bread, and there's never too much preparation. If I could have money, we were talking about money doesn't matter. If I could have all the money, I would rehearse way longer than films get to rehearse. I would give it a traditional theater rehearsal.
Mm-hmm. Which was nice, Marjorie stepping into this project, because we had already had the stage reading, and the cast knows each other and loves each other at this point. It's like one big family.
Yeah, that was nice to walk into. Preparation is, knowing the script inside and out. How I prepare differently from another director. Relationships. I don't know if I have anything different to say how any other director would prepare, but, I do think that the relationships, that I have with the actors are important, and also creating a safe place, a safe space, joking right off the bat, and knowing that it's okay. That I want to be professional. I don't want to start off seeming that that's what I'm trying to do, and walk into a room and say, "This is how we're going to do it by the book," and I'm going to stand up straight, and I'm going to not use curse words. Like when I introduced myself to the people Saturday, I immediately was like, "Let's all say a curse word together," and everyone was like, "Okay, great," and it sort of just like released that any tension that this was going to be a day where they had to be serious, behave. I don't like behaving.
Just in general.
And by the end of the day, they all, were singing Marjorie's praises as, the most positive director they've ever worked with, the most comforting, and, thank you for creating the safe space. So it was really, it's always beautiful to watch her work, but that day was, just how vulnerable everybody had to be, and the coming together really was like the best part, especially in today's world.
I do really believe in positivity and going against that Hollywood norm of that cutthroat Hollywood norm. And if there is any book, I would probably go off it a little bit. And if someone says, well, that's just not the way it's done, that makes me smile. I love the idea of guerrilla filmmaking. I love the idea of going off the beaten path.
Do you think about, because some female directors I've talked to have told me they think about how they dress and how they talk and, the kinds of shoes they wear, like all these other things besides how am I going to direct to make sure that there's enough respect as a woman walking into the room. Do you think about those things?
Certainly not with this project or surrounded by these people. I'm sure if I worked on a different project where I was surrounded by people that I felt that was something I had to think about. It's a blessing that I don't, because I'm surrounded by a lot of support and love. And isn't that nice?
Yes.
No, I mean, it's a good question. I love that question. I love it. I'm directing a play actually called Group, which is written by Leslie Gower, and it's going to be going up in a couple months for PTSD month. And one of the characters, it's in a little bit of revisions right now, but one of the characters is going through a transformation from being a man into a woman. So a transgender transformation and transitioning. So she puts lipstick on in one scene, and she feels her best. And someone made a comment that they would steer away from using lipstick as like a guide for feeling like a woman. And then it brought up a whole slew of things of what it means to feel like a woman. Yeah. I love wearing lipstick, but that's not what makes me feel like a woman. And then Saturday, when we were filming Inner Warrior, we had another woman who, from Bald is Beautiful say, I lost my hair, and for me that was like my womanhood. And she said, and then they took my ovaries. And then it became, well, what defines me? How do I know I'm a woman? How does anyone know I'm a woman? What does that mean? And so you say, like, are you thinking about what you're wearing or how you're speaking to people? I think those thoughts are probably present within us every single day.
True.
When we go to work, if you speak to your children, you're wondering how you're sounding when you go to work, when you go to the post office, when you're directing a film. I really feel that I lose any sense of gender when I'm working. When I'm really passionate and in it, something else takes over and I just become a creature more than a male or female. But I always had some kind of in-between growing up. I played sports and played with G.I. Joes and cut off Barbie's hair and only played with boys and had snowball fights. But then crochet, and do like that. Crocheting might not be too female. It might be actually like more senior activities that I participate in. So, I was doing costuming in college, and I was, playing soccer with an all-male Mexican team up in Harlem. So I have a nice balance in life, but I do feel that when you're in it, hopefully, if you're really in it, all of that just sort of washes away and you're only focused on story. So I would like to say that doesn't come into mind when you're surrounded by the right people, the right crew, I think. Hopefully I never work on anything where I feel that I'm thinking about that because I'm in the wrong place. I hope I carry the values through my journey in Hollywood. You know?
This is striking me lately. I interviewed a group last night who also did an independent project. And what I'm hearing more and more from independent filmmakers is that you're creating your own way to do it.
Yeah.
And changing the system. It's really exciting.
Well, we see that. I mean, you know, on the business end of this film, we already have 12 distributors that have contacted us. And, you know, I think that especially, you know, with the recent win of Moonlight and the platforms like HBO, Netflix, and Amazon, and Cinematico, who's now streaming 3 of my shorts, you know, it's really opened the market and changed for the better in the way of independents can now compete with studio budgets. And
but you're also changing the process.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's it gives us freedom to create.
Yeah, I read
our own way of doing it.
Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew years ago, and I remember thinking that was a great example. You know, his first film that he was working on was it El Mariachi in the early '90s, and Rebel Without a Crew. It's like no money. This is how he would, you know, when he was younger, he taught himself everything he knew. He didn't go to school. He just took tapes, a bunch of VHS tapes, and would like cut things together. And I thought that was really inspiring. And
or you think of Robert Townsend and how he shot the Hollywood Shuffle. You know, maxed out his credit cards, and they would like drive up, no permits, and drive up to whatever. Everybody get out, shoot the scene real quick, you know, and then get back in the van before the police came and, you know, got them in trouble. And that was, I thought, and then that was a fun film, you know, and silly, but just that somebody would wouldn't even occur to me to do that, to go into all this credit card debt. You know, he just applied for all, because when you can get credit cards like crazy, and apply for them all and use that to finance it, but also not get permits, which of course you could do. I guess that was the 80s. I'm not really sure. I forget the year, but you know, that was the sort of thing you could get away with. Because the thing is, once somebody gets away with it once, and then they're like, I can't do that anymore. So then you're done with that way of doing it. So
I think people just want to connect now too. I mean, I sat in on the Produced By conference, and Elizabeth Banks was there, and you know, it was really interesting to hear her speak as a producer, because she's really an actor first. So everything, you know, that she works on, she wants to feel in line with, and you know that it's for a greater good. And she's not doing that right now, you know. And she has other people around her, and you know, business decisions get made. But she said the biggest thing I took from that weekend was, if you have something that has a heartbeat and is creating connections, like, keep moving forward, because we need that more than ever. You know, the studios don't have it right. We have a broken system in Hollywood, and you know, now is the time to keep creating.
But people, I think, really are wanting to have more purpose in their work. I think people want to watch more purpose.
Yeah. I was trying to say, you know, go off book, focus on telling the story. You don't have to go by a book. The book is valuable. The things that we learn in filmmaking are very valuable. But, like, one thing I love is, you probably know this, the Bechdel test. Making sure that there's 2 female characters in your story and that they're having a conversation that's not about men.
It's a simple thing.
But Moonlight didn't have that. But Moonlight was important. And it didn't matter. They didn't. So if that's your rule book, if that's all your rule book is that you have 2 women have a conversation, there are certain times where it doesn't matter. Just tell the story. And you know, they had 2 female characters that interacted. You know that they did, but they didn't interact, you know, on screen. There are films that don't follow that test that matter, and it doesn't matter if they followed that or not. That's something that I'd like to include, but at the same time, just tell the story. You know, it doesn't matter if you're doing something weird like, well, that's just not done. That's not the way it's done. You don't house actors in your home. You know, you don't offer a bed and breakfast or cater your own film. And screw that. I mean, I really love cooking. I would think it would be hilarious if the director just like had a spaghetti dinner one night and was just like, this is it. I'm making,
Yeah. Well, I always tell my students, obviously discipline is part of what I have to work with some kids that have emotional issues. And then we get into the whole rules thing, and I say, the thing about rules is you can break them, but you need to know what they are, so you know which ones are good to break and which ones don't touch that one, because they're, you don't want to break the rule of going in the off-ramp in the wrong direction at 90 miles an hour, because that's going to be a tragedy. Mm-hmm. But, if you're going to speed, at least be speeding in the right direction, and look out for cops, kind of thing, that, I mean, not that I advocate speeding or anything, but I'm just saying.
No, the book is valuable.
Yes, the book is valuable, and you just need to know which pages to tear out. And which pages to tape back in, if you tore them out by accident.
That's what I did with my life.
I know, that was a great thing, is when after, as we were working on the first draft, and Jaret came back from, I think you were home for your mom's birthday, and he calls me, you have to talk to my mom. And then there was that conversation. And then he came back from his birthday, and he goes, you have to talk to my brother. Because, I guess because now that the script was happening and people were talking, I wasn't there, but I'm assuming this is what happened, family talking, and he realized there were things that I needed to know in order to make
they didn't want to share with me.
I don't know. Well, but then the funny thing is, the first time I spoke with his mom, before we could even, she goes, she wanted to defend and justify her choices, and almost felt guilty. And I said, you know what? I'm not judging you. I'm just trying to tell your story as authentically as I can. I said, because the thing is, you're from the suburbs of Long Island. I'm from the inner city of West Philadelphia. These are two diametrically opposed demographics, yet there are stories that transcend that. Yeah. And I could, I can tell your story without it being slanted wrong. The bias will be correct. The bias will be what it needs to be. It's just, me, a black woman telling a white woman's story, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Exactly. That's irrelevant. That's and now as we've gotten closer and closer, that's how I describe it. So these people have invited me into the deepest recesses of the intimate parts of their life, and they trust me, and that's one of the most beautiful things you can ask for, and I just love them, and they're just now, like, Jaret had a party, and he said, oh, this is my grandmother's sauce. I'm like, Winnie, because, here's this woman I've been writing about.
Her now.
Yes, and here's this character that I'm writing about. All of a sudden, he's making the sauce, and I identified, I said, oh yeah. And then the first time I met her, it was so cute. She said, now who are you again? And I was like, doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. I know you. That's what matters. So it's just a very, very, in fact, I think the only major character that I have not met is his dad.
Yeah, we gotta meet the
which,
dad.
I just, that, which will be intriguing to, because now this is, somebody that I'm trying to portray as honestly as possible. And honestly, the first draft that I read, I was like, oh my God, I love this man. He's fabulous. And then I reread it. Yes. And then I reread the script and I was like, ooh, how did I miss that? Like, okay, wait, fabulous might be a strong word.
Except for the one thing.
But still at the same time, so it's very easy to see how you could be charmed by him, and how,
Yeah, relationships are complicated. It's not,
Yes,
how easy would it be if he was just a villain? It would be like, why am I staying? Although people would still stay. But it needs to be hard. It's hard. It's hard to leave for many reasons. And the fact that he was charming and
that's what
smart and driven.
Well, the last thing somebody that read the script, they got mad and they were like, why won't you let me like this man? And Jaret said, feel my pain. Feel what we felt growing up. Why won't he let us like him? Why won't he let us love him? I think that's the key thing of somebody learning to give and receive love is really what the script is about. And here was somebody that had all the love in the world that was his oyster, and he threw it away. Mm-hmm. He threw it away. And
that's how we end. It's we play with the dark and the light, and, that way where, my dad, till this day, is surrounded, he had, each scene he has a brand new car. I mean, everything in the story is true to life. And he said every car, every Rolex watch, every, gambling and, surrounded by all this imported stone and wood in his 10,000 square foot showroom.
Yeah.
And he keeps, the family picture right beside his desk, but he sits there alone and cuts his Cuban cigar and,
we have it all in there. Just
like,
all these little, I mean,
while my mom's home surrounded by her family in her own home, and it's like,
I mean, there were some parts that I wrote because of, you think of Joseph Campbell, The Hero Has a Thousand Faces, or you think of Christopher, I forget his last name, but he wrote The Hero's Journey based on that. And the bottom line is that you're always telling the same story. It's just what's the baggage that the character is carrying. And so there were some parts where Jaret really goes, wait, were you there? Like, how do you know about this? I'm like, because this is what humans do. And that's what I remember when I first started really growing and feeling like I was evolving as a writer, was when I would have a character that was in some sort of predicament, and I'm like, well, what would they do? And I'm like, well, what would 99% of the world do? Because we're not that different. We're all so much alike, as different as everybody wants to make us. Look, you hear a dog barking, you're gonna run. You don't go, oh, what kind of dog is it? You just run,
Wow.
So I mean, if you hear a big, deep wolf, if you're I'm
the most curious. You don't talk to me about dogs.
Well, no, I'm just saying, okay,
Dog whisperer.
You're a little different then. I am
I'm
too.
kidding.
Oh, okay, but
you chose a funny example.
I'm just saying there's certain things that, here's a different one. You hear a bullet.
Yeah.
A gunshot. You're not, this is the funny part, the difference between how black people and white people react to that.
City dwellers.
White people are like, who's shooting? Black
they
people
go to the window. Yeah. I'm out of here.
We don't care. We're gone.
City people dodge. Don't worry. We don't go to the window. I always know when someone's visiting, when they're like, what's up there?
Go to the window.
I was at a party once, and it was like downtown and with these friends, and we were drinking and talking and having a good time, and all of a sudden it was like loud voices, and there was a little balcony, and I'm out there, I was with my friend, and we're just chatting, and we're hearing loud voices. She's Latina, Gloria, none of the non-Latino or non-people of color reacted, but she and I both went, and we just leaned and like, all right, who's shouting? Because after shouting comes shooting, and do we need to go? Because we're downtown, so whoa. And it was kind of funny, and we both
it's conditioning.
It was like choreography, the way that we both stepped and leaned and looked to see, and then we leaned back and we looked at each other and we just busted out laughing. It was so funny because we couldn't believe that nobody else even reacted to the noise. I'm like, did you not hear that shouting? So that's the kind of interesting thing in telling the story of a demographic that is not my own, is finding out how much alike we all are. And this is proof, because it's a genre.
Unless there's a dog or gunshot.
Well, yeah, unless there's a dog with gunshots. But it's a genre that I don't usually write. I don't usually do drama, and it's a group of people that I did not grow up with. I grew up obviously I grew up diverse because
Philly.
Yeah. And mom just like what Jaret was saying about it, my mom made sure that I got out and about and knew all kinds of people and just had no prejudices and no fears.
Yeah.
And just when I wanted to go, she was like, okay, have fun, just call.
Now, I think, because you're really speaking a lot to equality, which is something I'm obsessing about right now, and representation, and really we all want to get to the point where we're all just humans and we all have stories and that... And we're
astrologically, we're in the 70s again.
Yeah.
Well, it's the dawning of the age of Aquarius, exactly.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, we still have to talk about it obsessively.
Yes.
Because without talking about it, we're not going to get there. Even though sometimes I feel like the talking about it is more separating than anything. But the state of the country right now, we must have this kind of dialogue and this kind of storytelling.
And find out who your allies are and who your enemies are. People that you might have thought were allies that maybe aren't. And, and friends that surprise you by how...
By voting wrong.
Well, I don't...
Well,
they think they voted right.
History repeats itself, and we keep getting better and better.
Yes,
from
exactly.
a spiritual thing, I've had this conversation with Pat where it's like, if we didn't, or not we, but if people didn't vote in the biggest ego in our world... We would have he's the biggest mirror for this country.
Yes, because people are reflecting, and looking.
Controversial, I know. I think it's a good thing.
People start talking.
I think it's a good thing that we have the president we have, because I have never found that so many people are now interested and informed about what's going on in government and politics. Isn't it interesting how way more people are now reading and learning and participating
and stepping up
showing
to run.
up.
And the important stuff is getting squashed.
We were
his
almost
bands
complacent
and his
before
Trump
because we were
care and
comfortable.
everything else. So.
And now when you say we, because that's the tricky part when people, some people are like, we have to do something. We're like, we who? I don't have to really do much. I've been doing it a long time, but
Right.
yes,
Like, I've been in this fight.
you might need to be doing,
Yeah.
yes. But this is a joke because that's my stand-up comedy. I'm like, we who? Because we need to. And I'm like,
welcome to the party.
Yes.
Get on
Yes.
board.
But
Yes.
I do think that people are
Yes.
more, they're participating more and more
Even-
interested.
When I know a lot of people told me in interviews right around the election not to panic because this is when the artists come out.
Yep.
Do their work.
Exactly.
And I think we're seeing it.
This year for sure.
I had felt such a weight that night, and then
It was terrible.
Oh, I was
didn't want
trembling.
to. I didn't want to admit it at first, but I was also excited for Stronger Than Pretty and other platforms
Yes,
like this
yes.
because not that if Hillary would have won, we still would have had a place.
Everybody
but
was still,
now
but
we have
the
a
complacency
bigger
with
place
it.
more than.
It really was, the weight was so much earlier, wasn't it? Because you just realized how divided we really were. So it was even before the win, wasn't it? That it was just quite obvious that we were miles and years apart from where we thought we were.
Well, but as someone who has had the N-word screamed at me on the street, I might be aware. I might have been a little.
No, of
no, I
course.
don't mean.
yeah.
I don't mean it that way.
I think that's.
But I've had to have
absolutely
arguments.
Right, though.
I've had arguments with people like, no, it's not like that anymore. And I'm like, okay,
Oh, no.
well, let's
Anyone
go flag
who
the
was
cab.
like it- yeah.
I'll get the cab, and then
No.
that. So they're also it's the very minute things that people were not aware of. So, and
I think you're aware. It's just so much more in your face when you watch it on television like that.
Yes,
you know what I
yes.
mean?
or when it actually is in your face.
Yeah,
And you're trying
yeah.
to, so, but yeah, I bet, but, and I even had somebody, commented the other day, there was based on some video that she was unhappy with, and she goes, videos like that are why I don't like men. And I was like, well,
all of them?
Not all men. And she goes, well, the ones that I know, and then actually says, if I based my friendships on how a few white people have treated me, I would have no white friends. So, in terms of talking about racism, and this was obviously dealing with sexism. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I have far too many men in my life that are fabulous that I'm never going, I don't want that said in my presence, because then if I allow that, then how does that make them think that I feel about them? And that's why I just shut that down. Obviously, it was a social media issue.
You just have to always stay open.
Yeah, and not say everyone. And then of course they try and call it, well, everyone I know. And I'm like, well, how many of those everyone's do you know? Because that's like, I can't even hold my fingers far enough apart to say what that represents of how many of those there actually are. So
We would like it to be known we love men.
we love men.
We love men.
And white people. We love white people.
We love white people.
And Latinos.
Some of the
and
best
Asians.
people I know are white.
Some of my best friends are white.
Some of my best friends are white. We love all people.
What was really funny was the day that we were having the stage reading, when we were casting for the stage reading, and Jaret's friend Lonnie, when he had just read the script, and when I hadn't met him, I think it was my first time meeting him, or my second time, I can't remember. And when I walked in, this gets to your question about how you like to be treated as, a woman director or something. So I walked in and he went, beautiful. And I was like, thank you. And he goes, every word was beautiful. And I was like, oh, yeah, thank you.
There's your conditioning.
And I was all like, he thinks I'm beautiful. No, dear, he thinks your words are beautiful. Which I still, but it was a little bit, I had to make that adjustment because I was all flattered. But wrong, flattered the wrong way.
Pat is also beautiful.
Oh, well, thank you. So is Marjorie. So anyway, yeah, that was... We are creating great art in turbulent times, and it's just an honor to be part of this project at the right time.
Any final thoughts? Any last thing you want to say?
After the family and friends screening, Jaret's brother Angelo hugged me and whispered "thank you" in my ear, and I just teared up. It was so wonderful.
It makes it all worth it.
Yes, it did. It was a very private moment, and he just went "thank you," and I was like, "You're welcome." And I didn't even know what else to say. I just thought that was so nice.
You don't need to say anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a director's statement for Jaret. He asked me to write a director's statement, and I guess I would just like to share the opening quote that I put at the top. I've got a lot of projects going on this year, working on this, what we did this past weekend for Inner Warrior. I'm directing Group, which is about people going through PTSD. And then I'm also working on a short film called Grief with Dante Russo, and that takes a sock who's been separated from his other half, his other sock, through the 5 stages of grief. Very sweet. And that's dealing with Dante's loss of his sister. So there's all these stories that are coming together. And there's this book called Deep Survival, which I really recommend. It's a very good book. It's called Deep Survival, Who Lives, Who Dies, and Why. It's by Lawrence Gonzalez. But anyway, the quote that I wanted to read is, "The perfect adventure shouldn't be that much more hazardous in a real sense than ordinary life. For that invisible rope that holds us here can always break." And we're telling a story of what seems like ordinary life in extraordinary circumstances,
The rest of that director's statement had, you had incorporated the fact that our screening was the day after the National Women's March.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was also perfect timing.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Julie.
This was really fun.
Yeah.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A History of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Jaret Martino, Pat Branch, and Marjorie LeWit for telling their stories and their collective story. And special thanks to Jonathan Lucas for editing, Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on iTunes and Stitcher and subscribe and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can subscribe there, and I will send you an email every time I put up a new episode so you don't miss anything. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Other50% and Instagram at Other50% Podcast. And don't forget to check out The Other 50%, A History of Tech. Thanks for listening. See you next time.